He who lives without honor will end without honor.
Assault rifles. This is the most diverse weapon category in the game. There are a lot of options to choose from, catering to a wide variety of player preferences, even though some do it way worse than others. Hell, you don't even have to be part of the assault rifle category to qualify as one. Almost every weapon class has at least one weapon that replicates the exact functionality of an assault rifle. And the one representing the marksman rifle category is none other than the SO-14, more specifically with the Wildfire perk. This attachment used to be a gimmick and not much else, because switching a marksman rifle into full auto is inherently funny.
Marksman.
But it wasn't exactly a viable option. However, it has received a pretty sizable buff in the Season 3 update, making it a rather strong option now. And that's because the SO-14 Wildfire is a long-range monster. Here's why. Just to clarify, this video will be exclusively covering the fully automatic version of the weapon, since the base gun is so functionally different that it doesn't really make much sense to have it in the same video. Also, for the rest of this video, I'll be calling it the Auto 14 just to clearly distinguish them. And there is no way I'm going to say SO-14 Wildfire 50 times. But to understand why the Auto 14 is good now, it is important to understand what changed with the weapon. For some backstory, the Auto 14 prior to the Season 3 update required 4 out of the 4 shots to hit the upper body in order to achieve a 4-tap. This was basically impossible, as even a single stomach shot would result in a 5-tap, meaning that its realistic 4-tap range was only limited to the initial damage phase, which is pretty short. This essentially forced the player to mega stack range, making it incredibly slow. I'm talking slower than most LMGs slow. And all that just to still have a shorter 4-tap range than some SMGs. So the Wildfire conversion was, at best, pretty much just a copium attachment for those who can't use semi-automatics but really want to use this weapon for some reason. But with the Season 3 update, that is no longer the case. Its stomach multiplier has gone up to 0.95, and its leg multiplier is up to 0.93. This means that it can now very consistently 4-tap in the second damage phase by landing just one upper body shot, assuming you don't hit the legs. This addresses the biggest downside of the weapon, as you no longer have to stack a ridiculous amount of range just to have a passable range profile. It also received nerfs to 2 of its attachments. The Polar Fire S was given a 10% penalty to sprint fire time. This is the definition of a nothing change, as it only increases the sprint to fire time by 1 frame at 60 FPS. This isn't very noticeable, especially when you consider the many ways of negating sprint to fire time. The other nerf is to the FTAC RTP40 stock. It has received an additional 20% hit flinch penalty. This one is actually noticeable, as it will take the hit flinch up to 0.78, which is a little too high for a weapon that is meant to be used outside of close quarters. So this will force players to instead use the SO-55 adapter, which in turn makes the ADS movement speed a bit slower. However, this change is more so intended for the base weapon, as it isn't exactly an optimal choice in the context of the full auto version to begin with. Hey, editing sleep here. As I was editing this video, I realized that I forgot to mention that they also nerfed the base bull impact, going from 1.5 to 1.3. But the Wildfire perk was given a 15% bull impact buff to compensate, effectively cancelling out the nerf. Unless you really care about a 0.01 bull impact difference. Anyway, back to the video. So overall, these nerfs will not affect the Auto 14 much. I will also mention the changes it has received in the Season 4 update, since I know some of you guys will comment about it. The base weapon has received a nerf to its stomach multiplier, going down to 0.95. But to compensate for this, the Wildfire perk no longer penalizes the stomach multiplier, so this change is fully cancelled out. And the 50 round drums now reduce the headshot multiplier by 0.1. Editing sleep here again. Turns out there were a few additional changes that I missed, because I started working on this video long before the balance changes were released. The base head damage multiplier of the Auto 14 has been increased from 1.6x to 1.7x to offset the penalty from the 50 round drums. Honestly speaking, this is a completely unnecessary change, because even if they didn't do this, it won't change your shots to kill. They also increased the chest damage multiplier from 1x to 1.1x, which means that you can guarantee a 4-tap in the second damage phase with a single chest shot. And at the time of me making this video, the stomach multiplier has been increased from 0.95x to 1.095x. This is obviously a bug, since it is not shown in the comparison chart, so I will be ignoring it for this video. But I have left a pinned comment explaining exactly what this does for the weapon because it is actually a pretty sizable buff. So feel free to pause the video and give it a good read. And if it does get patched out, I will be updating it to let you guys know. So fortunately, both these changes do not impact the Auto-14 in any practical way, else I'd have problems because I wrote this script 2 weeks in advance. Now we can talk about the actual weapon itself. I shall be comparing the Auto-14 with the XM4 and Lachmann 556, since these weapons are statistically similar. Starting off with the lethality, we can see that the Auto-14's 4-tap time to kill is pretty much identical to the XM4's at 240 milliseconds, slightly faster than the Lachmann. And just like the other two assault rifles, the Auto-14 is capable of 3-tapping in the initial damage phase with just a single headshot, resulting in a very competitive time to kill of 160 milliseconds. But what stands out here is the range. The Auto-14's 4-tap range is top tier, just shy under 40 meters. This covers pretty much every practical sightline in standard multiplayer, and this potential range is very consistent. For context, the Lachmann at the furthest end of its 4-tap range has a fairly punishing upper arm multiplier. Hitting this area even once will result in a 5-tap unless you can get a chest shot. While the upper arms are the least common part to hit in a face-to-face gunfight, it does mean that you might end up killing slower even if you aim high. The Auto-14 on the other hand simply requires you to hit the arms or chest just once, to 4-tap as long as you don't hit the legs. This is a lot more consistent in comparison and results in a more realistic 4-tap potential. I will also like to point out that unlike the other two weapons, the Auto-14 will never drop to a 6-shot kill. So in the rare events that you do have to challenge someone on the opposite end of the map, it will not feel like a BB gun. When it comes to weapons accuracy, the Auto-14 is very impressive. In fact, this is arguably the best part of the weapon. Its BSA is incredibly tight. This is basically to the point that it is no longer a relevant factor even at the longest of ranges. So you can't blame the BSA as an excuse for your bad aim with this gun. Its recoil is also phenomenal. The magnitude is incredibly low, being very similar to the Lachmann 556, and the pattern is straight up brain dead, going up with a slight lean to the right. As Signo put it, this is confidence recoil. This means that you can straight up turn your brain off and cross-map the head glitch on Diesel with little to no effort. Finally, we have what I believe to be the dumbest part of the weapon, the bullet impact, having a value of 1.5. Yeah. For some reason, the devs thought it was perfectly fine to let a gun that fires at 750 rounds per minute to deal more hit flinch than a f***ing PKM. Yes, flinch cooldown exists, but with this kind of fire rate, you'll be inflicting a more steady supply of hit flinch, which will make it harder for enemies to land shots accurately on you. But unlike the base version of the weapon, the Auto-14 actually has drawbacks. Truly, a shocking concept. For starters, let's talk about the magazine. Now, 50 rounds is perfectly standard for assault rifles. The actual problem is the reload time, taking around 1.93 seconds for its tactical reload and exactly 2 seconds when reloading from empty. For a mag of this size, this is incredibly slow. Slow enough that you'll actually hesitate before hitting that reload button. So you might find yourself getting caught on the reload if you're playing more aggressively, which you shouldn't because of the reasons I'll mention later. And because the wildfire attachment already takes up the perk slot, you can't use sleight of hand to mitigate this. Oh yeah, that is another downside of this gun. You need wildfire to convert it into the SO-14 in the first place. This means two things. First, the perk slot is completely eliminated, in addition to being unable to make the reload time faster with sleight of hand. You can't use the disable perk, which would have been oh so strong since marksman rifles have access to full body disable. Then again though, do we really want a gun like this to also inflict guaranteed slow on hits? I guess it's for the better. The second problem is that it greatly limits your build options, since you basically only have 4 attachments to work with. Actually, it's more like 2 if you consider the essential attachments such as the mag and suppressor. Given how strong some of its attachments can get, this means that you actually have to make some kind of sacrifice when building this gun, which you'll see once we get into the build portion of the video. Then we move on to the biggest drawback of the weapon, its mobility and handling. Its ADS time is on the slower end for assault rifles at 297 milliseconds. This is, honestly speaking, not the worst. The Odin, a top tier assault rifle, has an even slower ADS time, so you can definitely work with this value. But the real kicker here is the mobility. The Auto-14 sprints at a sluggish 5.44 meters per second and strafes at 2.3 meters per second. This is not just slow, this is straight up LMG territory. For context, this is basically identical to the mobility stacked PKM build, so you're basically a sentry gun with legs. You'll absolutely have to switch to your secondary when getting around the map, and jiggle peeking will be a bit of a challenge. So what are we working with? Well, we have a gun that features competitive time to kill, top tier range, strong headshot multiplier, phenomenal accuracy both in its BSA and recoil, along with high bullet impact, at the cost of slow reload speed, handling and mobility. Based on its accuracy, range and mobility, it is quite easy to tell that this is a weapon that encourages a more passive playstyle. It is a main AR. But what sets the Auto-14 apart from the other main ARs? Before we can answer that, we have to address the universal problem that all main ARs face, that being the time to kill. I've already discussed this in my KN-44 and UL-736 video, but I'll bring it up again. To balance main ARs for being stronger at longer ranges, these weapons are made weaker at close range, usually by making the time to kill slower. Examples include the LK-24, M16 Wildfire, and Kilo 141. The issue with this is that most gunfights are within close to mid-range, i.e. 0 to 30 meters. This presents a problem twofold. 1. You will have less opportunities to utilize their superior long-range performance. And 2. You'll be experiencing their close-range weakness a lot more, and you'll get outgunned pretty often. This is the reason you don't see any main ARs in the current meta. There are a small handful that have the potential to kill faster, such as the ICR-1, KN-44 and UL-736. But this is only potential, as these guns can't achieve their faster time to kills on a consistent basis. And these weapons tend to sacrifice some of their long-range performance as a trade-off. The Auto-14 is very unique in this regard, as instead of trading time to kill, it trades mobility, meaning that it is the only main AR that doesn't have a slow or inconsistent time to kill. This allows you to actually keep up with the current meta, and because this is also one of the most accurate guns in the game, this means that you aren't missing quite as much, which results in a much more realistic time to kill. And then you add the bonus of high bullet impact, so when you have a gun that doesn't miss, makes the enemy miss more, and has an actually decent time to kill, this makes for a weapon that is nigh unbeatable at range, with the only weapons that can reliably challenge it being DMRs and sniper rifles. The downside of slow mobility seems pretty bad, but given that this is a passive weapon, it is actually pretty manageable. You're going to be hanging back at range anyway, so you don't really need to be running around that much. And if you do have to rotate to crucial positions, you can just swap to your secondary. This is normally an issue on flex weapons since there is a big risk of getting caught without your gun out, but on main ARs not so much, because again, you'll be playing further away from the enemy, so the chances of this happening are much lower. So as long as you're not a dumb f*** and trying to use this like an XM4, the mobility isn't enough of a con to make this weapon not viable. Overall, the Auto-14 is easily the best main AR, due to its unique strength of having actually viable time to kill for flex encounters, while being incredibly effective at longer ranges. And now, it is not better than the base semi-automatic version of the weapon, quite the opposite. Then again, that gun basically makes every other weapon irrelevant, so there's that. But the Auto-14 in the very least is a fun alternative that isn't obscenely busted, and showcases how a main AR can be viable even in the current flex heavy meta. And hey, if the nerf to the base weapon really did put you off, you could still use this version of the weapon. When it comes to building the Auto-14, we'll be committing to the main AR playstyle. Start with the Wildfire perk to actually convert this weapon into the Auto-14, 50 round drums for the largest mag size, Polar Fire S for range and concealment, 5GN tactical cheek rest for accuracy and ADS time, and the Schlager PEQ box for laser to cut down on the ADS time even further. If you don't like the iron sights and don't have a good blueprint, you can replace the laser with an optic of preference for better visibility. You might find the ADS time to be too slow without the laser, so you can use the Gauge 9 Mono instead of the Polar Fire S. You do lose a bit of range, but you also get faster ADS time. Now let's just say that you still think that you absolutely cannot stand the slow sprint speed. Then let's put the Polar Fire S back on, and replace the last attachment with the 16-inch Chrome Line RFX 40 barrel. With this build you get flex AR grade ADS time, and most importantly, much better mobility, taking you from PKM tier to something closer to a slow assault rifle, but you lose even more range as a trade-off. And that covers everything there is to know about the Auto-14. Obviously the base version of the weapon is much better, I mean no shit, it is the strongest weapon in the entire game. But the full auto version of the weapon is, in my opinion at least, much more fun. The combination of sheer beaming potential and decent time to kill makes for a very strong and satisfying weapon to use. But that's just my experience from using the weapon, so what do you guys think about the Auto-14? Do you prefer using this gun in semi-auto or full auto? Be sure to let me know in the comments. And if you found the video helpful, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe. But until then, I'll be seeing you in the next one. Bye bye.